if you're ready to begin. I've got two events that I want to talk to you about today. And let me talk about the train crash first. That is one of the most heart-wrenching, sad events as a law enforcement officer that you can ever witness. Yasmin White, who was only 11 years of age and in 5th grade at Davenport School of the Arts, did what kids do. She was home with her brother, who was 9. He was certainly old enough to watch himself. While he was taking a nap, she thought, hey, I'll go across the railroad track to the convenience store, which is close to the house, and pick up some stuff. And she did. She got 2 drinks, I'm presuming one for her and one for her younger brother. She got some chips, some chewing gum, some snacks, and was walking back to her house. As she was walking back to her house, she did what a lot of young folks do. She had her earbuds in her ears, and she was walking up and over the tracks. The engineer of the Amtrak, which was traveling 68 miles an hour, which was 2 miles an hour underneath the speed limit, saw this young child walking toward the tracks and saw that she was not paying any attention, and he started blowing the horn, and he continuously blew the horn for about a quarter of a mile, all the while he's trying to stop the train. Yasmin walked up and over the tracks with her earbuds in and never, ever, ever heard the train until the absolute last seconds when she looked up and it was too late, and she tried to jump off of the tracks, and she died as a result of being hit by the train. I can tell you that I go to a lot of calls, a lot of death scenes, and going to the death of a child is horrific. And when you think this young lady at only 11 years of age was picking up snacks and drinks for her and her 9-year-old brother, mom was on the way home from work, gosh, that's such a wholesome thing to do. We know that today, we haven't analyzed these earbuds, but we know that they make noise canceling earbuds. And if you have noise canceling earbuds, plus you have your favorite music in your ears, the end result is what apparently at this point in the investigation we saw. She never heard the train. There'll be a complete and thorough investigation by us as well as by Amtrak and their law enforcement agencies and risk management, but it's just a horrible, horrible tragedy. We don't see anything at all out of the ordinary at this point in the investigation. Amtrak was apparently within the speed limit. They saw the child coming. They hit the brakes. They're on the horn. We reviewed the video, and we certainly will get copies of that from their law enforcement agency. It's just one of those days at work. It's not fun. And most days we do this job, it is fun. But it was a very, very sad occasion. That occurred while we were at the scene of a homicide, which I'll talk to you about next. And about 1:45, 3 Good Samaritans were southbound on Berkeley Road when they saw a man standing by his garbage can, obviously bleeding, trying to flag down help. They stopped their vehicles. It was 2 semis and a passenger car. And they ran to him, and he was obviously significantly wounded. He was shot several times and said that we've been robbed. And he made statements that a friend of his was in the house. They, of course, dialed 911, and then they bravely went into the house to check on the friend and found him deceased in the house. And obviously EMS, fire, and our deputies arrived. What we learned through the investigation is that the suspects apparently, at this point in the investigation, arrived in a Chevy Sonic. We expect that car to possibly be a 2016 to a 2018. After they committed the robbery, the murder, and the attempted murder, they also took the victim's truck with them. We could see both vehicles leaving. We saw that the vehicles went north on Berkeley Road and then intersected Highway 33 in Polk City and turned due north. So Berkeley does not run due north. And then turned due north on Highway 33 and moved through the city of Polk City. We need to find these vehicles because they should lead us to our suspects. So now we know there are two suspects. There's obviously at least two suspects. I don't know if there's any more than that. The feedback that we got from our victim who is still alive, Kenneth Mayer, is very, very marginal at this point. Kenneth, who's 57's condition deteriorated as EMS arrived and fire services arrived. He made statements to the Good Samaritans that he'd been robbed. He is in Lakeland Regional now in intensive care in critical condition. But the good news is he's stable. Last night when we talked to you, he was not stable at all. The other victim who's deceased is Bill Reese, R-E-I-S. He's a white male, 68 years of age. There's a $3,000 reward leading to information that just causes the arrest of these folks. It's important to understand we're going to find out who they are. So collect your $3,000 and give us the anonymous tip before we find out on our own. And you'll get the money, we'll get our suspects, and certainly our vehicles. Now, here's part of our dilemma at this point. You say it was robbery, so what kind of robbery was it? Guns. We have established up to this point that there may have been as many as 31 guns in the victim's house. Bill Reese sold guns to friends and family. So he would, by word of mouth, say, hey, I buy and sell guns. Obviously, these folks that chose to commit this murder and robbery knew there were guns there. And that's exactly what they took. We have an example of the kinds of guns that make up to 31. And you say, okay, why up to 31? Because we see records of up to 31 guns in the house, but we know that he buys and sells and trades. And at the end of the day, we don't know exactly how many they've gotten. But we do know this. We've got a lot of serial numbers. They're in the computer, now listed as stolen in a robbery. We've listed some of the more unique ones here for you to see. And we know that they didn't mind taking the life of two people in order to steal these guns. Now, I want you to think about this a second. They go there to commit a robbery. They shoot and kill one person and leave the other one for dead. These guns aren't going to be purchased by Sunday school teachers. These guns will go back to the streets with other thugs and other criminals and other robbers. That's why we have to get these folks off the street and recover the firearms. We think someone who may have purchased a gun in the past from Bill Reese might say, hey, I met Bill at a convenience store, and that's where the transaction took place. And by the way, someone else pulled up to look at a gun, and they happened to be driving a vehicle such as this. So what we're trying to do now is trace backward any sales transactions he had. Okay, for those of you concerned whether or not this purchase was right or legal, or forget that. We're not going back doing a firearms sale investigation to determine whether or not it was an appropriate sale. What we're trying to do is find a murderer or a couple of murderers, and we know that if you've purchased a firearm by Bill Reese, you may be able to help us. So at the end of the day, we know that they left going north toward Groveland on Highway 33 out of Polk City. And we need to solve this sooner rather than later, because right now, at this moment, they're actively trying to sell guns on the streets someplace. All right, any questions?
The deceased and the other victim, what is their relationship? Do they both live at the home?
They are two friends that have lived together there for, I think, like 10 years. They're buddies. And they have been buddies for a long time. And they, in fact, I don't want to give you the great detail, but I can tell you both of them were not initially present when the shooting began. The shooting began and it startled the other one, and he came to see what was going on, and then he was shot and killed as well.
But they were both
shot and not killed. One was shot and killed, and one was shot and not killed. Excuse me.
They were both in the
They were
house
both
with
in.
different
They were
parts
both
of
in the home, in different parts of the home, at the time the event started.
The unique guns you showed us pictures of, were they particularly expensive or rare?
No, not really. I mean, he had a cross section. He had handguns. He had semi-automatic handguns. He had long rifles. He had hunting rifles. He didn't have an arsenal of what you would call really cool AR-15 assault weapons, that sort of thing, that we're aware of at this point in the investigation.
There was some suggestion that they might have gone to Hillsborough County yesterday. Is that still a possibility?
The initial information that we received is possibly they were going toward the Plant City area. And once we ran all of that information to ground and figured it out, the information that we were initially given transposed a couple of digits in a phone number, and it had us going in a different direction. Someone got excited and gave us a bad phone number, and we were, quite frankly, doing emergency pings, and it turned out not to be the phone number.
How worried should people be that there are apparently one or two killers out there with all these guns?
Well, there are more than one or two killers out here. This is just the two we're hunting right now. So this is not a random act. They knew there were firearms in that house, and they went there to rob those two men of those firearms. So what we need to be worried about is that they're going to turn around and sell those firearms on the street to other thugs and thugettes. And they are going to use those firearms in criminal conduct. So at the end of the day, any information that you have, please send that to us. And quite frankly, some of these firearms are not traditional thug guns. So I can see that gun being handed off 2 or 3 times, and then some innocent person bumping into some decent guy at a yard sale someplace or at a flea market and saying, hey, I've got this really nice hunting rifle, and he buying this stolen gun and really has no idea that he's involved in buying a gun that was stolen during a robbery murder. because some of them are just not conducive of what thug and thugettes like to carry.
Selling guns out of your home doesn't sound illegal, Sheriff.
Well, I'm not sure that he was selling them out of his home, and that's still under investigation. We're told by his friends and family that he was exceptionally cautious with the way he sold guns. In fact, he'd made some statements to friends and relatives that, you know, if you're going to sell a gun, you want to pull a picture of the gun, of the light gun you're selling, and use that as opposed to putting a picture of the actual gun, because if you put a picture of the actual gun, then some of the programs will embed addresses and GPS and they can find your home.
Were they registered too, Mr.
So,
Beasley?
well, you don't have to register guns in Florida, or depending on the state you live in, you don't have to. You only have to sign if you buy a gun new. That's when it's registered that you purchased the firearm. If he bought these at a yard sale, if he bought these from an individual, that individual has no responsibility to do anything other than make sure he doesn't sell to a felon or someone who is designated as mentally ill. So at the end of the day, we think this is a guy who, as a hobby, bought and sold guns, and he might have bought and sold other items as well, but that's not of any consequence to us right now, unless, of course, he was selling some other item and these people were introduced to him. But for some reason, and that's what's under investigation, they knew to go to that house to rob him of many firearms. And that's what happened, and they murdered him being Bill Reese, and left his friend for dead.
Any idea how the total number of shots that were fired?
Yes, I'm not telling you how many shots were fired. That's what we call a secret. And we're going to keep it a secret until after we talk to our suspects.
Was it quick in and out?
We know that we saw them about 1:45 is when the Good Samaritans helped. And we see about it was probably 20-25 minutes. Certainly long enough to run in, steal, rob, and leave.
That would have happened around noon.
Well, we got the call about 1:45, okay? Obviously, he was out at the garbage can trying to flag down help at 1:45. We know that we saw the suspects about 1:40. So we don't know how about the 15 or 20 minutes before that, but it was pretty much in and out. It was quick, and it was dangerous.
Are there any particular precautions someone should take when they are selling a firearm?
Yeah, first and foremost, I recommend that if you're going to sell a firearm, sell it back to a reputable dealer. If you're going to sell a firearm to an individual, you're taking a huge risk, because if you turn a firearm over to somebody who's a convicted felon, you have criminal and civil liability there. So at the end of the day, we are supposing, based on this part of the investigation, that it was as a result of him previously selling firearms, but we're told at this point in time most of it was word of mouth. However, certainly we're interested in talking to people that might have bought firearms from him. Maybe they can shed some light on, oh, by the way, he did post on this social media page about firearms, and that will give us another lead to track down. And that's why we're talking to you today, because we have found when we speak with you and you put this out to this community who we love and trust, that they give us information, they give us good information, and they can stay absolutely anonymous. And as a result, we'll solve this case and put these guys in jail, because look, there's no reason for them not to pick out another gun dealer and rob and shoot him, because you can only go to jail for the rest of your life or be sentenced to death for the rest of your life one time. So they are very dangerous people. They need to be treated like very dangerous people. And we need to lock these suspects up very quickly.
So
Yes,
you
sir.
said there was video that came out? Is there video inside the house, or was that from a nearby business?
We were able to obtain it from various locations. We have a short video clip that we've compiled that we're going to give you that shows the two vehicles moving, but we obviously are not going to tell you where the video came from. Okay?
2 questions about the train accident.
The train crash, yes.
Did you say that she was wearing noise-canceling headphones?
I don't know that. I said there are noise-canceling headphones available today, and certainly she didn't hear the train or she wouldn't have walked up on the track. So whether or not she just was into her music and maybe had it turned up loud, but she absolutely did not hear the train, and the engineer blew that horn solid for probably a quarter of a mile.
Was she just purely going across?
Exactly.
Or was her back to the train?
She was walking across. You know, and let me talk about this for a second, about headphones, okay? There's not been one child killed because they were wearing headphones and walked into traffic. There's not been 2. We sit upstairs and can think of like 5 of them in the last couple of years alone, just here. Now you extrapolate that all over the United States, and these are, you know, at 11 years old, you're not, you know, you don't die. You don't die when you're 11 years old. You know, you're Teflon. You're going to live forever. The absolute last thing she thought about was being run over by a train. And the same thing with kids. There's been another young man that we worked a crash investigation. And that was maybe 2 or 3 years ago. He was on the railroad tracks, walking, listening. He never heard the train. And there's people that walk in front of cars and trucks. They never hear them, never see them, and they're so into their music or so into the game that they're playing that they just walk into traffic. And that's not a condemnation. They're kids. They're children. They're not thinking about that because you don't think about dying because you're listening to your favorite music on your iPhone with earbuds in your ears. So it rips our heart out. And I mean, for those of you who have children or grandchildren that age, and I got a whole lot of grandchildren that age, and you look at that and go, that could be our child or grandchild just as easy. Y'all be safe. Have a good day. Help us find these bad guys before they do something else stupid. Yeah. Yeah, by the way, if I use headphones at one point, it's earbuds.